Yeshua is the reason for the season, or is he? Let's explore a little bit. Those of us who have been Hebrew for more than a few years have learned a few things as we've walked this walk. One is that the pagan police and Torah terrorists will rise and rear their ugly heads several times a year, although they do seem to have gotten worse in the last few years. Hanukkah, Christmas, Passover, these are some of their favorite times because they get to throw any arrow they want, anywhere they want, and cause mass chaos. In 1 John 4:1, we're told to prove the spirits because not every spirit that comes out is from God. So let's go ahead and contrast Satan and Satan's disciples with Yeshua and Yeshua's disciples, or Talmudim. And while we're doing that, let's keep 1 John 4:3 in mind. Every spirit that does not confess that Yeshua Messiah has come in the flesh is not of Elohim. This is the spirit of the anti-Messiah, which we all know is coming, and we all know that spirit's already in the world. So what does Satan do? He resists God's people. It's the easy-to-read version of the Bible says, accuses us of doing wrong, and that's continual. You can find that verse in Zechariah 3:1, and it's echoed in Revelations 12:10. In John 8:44, we find out that he's the father of lies and that his children love doing the desires of Satan's heart. Yeshua and the 12 apostles and their being taken to trial gives us an inkling as to the mean-spiritedness of Satan's attacks and how well he varies them. Now that we've explored the dark side of life, let's lighten it up a bit with a look at Yeshua. Yeshua also copies his father's actions. He loves others as himself. He forgives trespasses quickly. He's slow to condemn us, other people, and he's the light of the world. Anyone who's known me for more than 10 years knows that I grew up hanging out with my grandmother. I married a native Alaskan. In other words, I love my elders. I love listening to them. Didn't ever always do what they told me to do, but I certainly did listen. One of the elders we have in the Hebrew Halakha, or walk, is Rav Shaul, or as most people know him, the Apostle Paul. This man was cherry-picked for us to learn from. Yes, he speaks way up on the mystery levels. Yes, he's hard to understand, but he was cherry-picked by Yahweh to show us what to do in our walks with Yahweh. He was a student of Gamliel, and Gamliel would not allow anyone to be a student of his unless he had completely, word for word, line for line, jot and tittle, memorized the entire Tanakh by the age of 12. He was then allowed to become a Pharisee and persecute the brethren, or Christians as they were known back then, keeping in mind that Christian comes from anointed, so the anointed ones, until the time was right and he met Yeshua on the Damascus Road, where Yeshua informed him he had chosen him to become a prophet to the nations. Yes, guys, that means us. Of course, Rav Shaul was entrenched in the Jewish custom of not eating or really associating with anything pagan or technically unclean because he wouldn't be able to go into the temple. Yahweh went out of his way to use symbolism and metaphor to teach Rav Shaul that he should not judge anything as unclean or common. Of course, we're also told not to judge because with the measure we judge, we will be measured, which that can get a little bit hairy. So we should follow Rav Shaul's example, and as he told Sovereign Agrippa, not be disobedient to the heavenly vision. And the heavenly vision he was speaking about was Yeshua appearing to him on the Damascus Road. In Paul's conversation with Cornelius, we find out that what or thing is actually man. And in Acts 10:28, he actually states that he was shown that he should not call any man. If we go a little bit deeper into the words call, it's an affirmation, and an affirmation in today's speak is a judgment. Once again, we will be judged with the same measure we judge, so we really need to step off of that. In James 2:9, we find out that showing partiality is also missing the mark or committing a sin, and once we miss the mark or commit a sin, we're guilty of breaking the entire Torah. So Yeshua's admonition to take care of the beam in our eye instead of worrying about the splinter in our brother's eye has got great merit when it comes to judging holidays or religious practice or just people in general. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's move on to Hanukkah. Hanukkah is known as the Feast of Dedication. The reason being is that before Christ was born, the Jews were under Greek and Syrian rule. Antiochus had determined that he was going to exterminate the Jews. He devastated Jerusalem and he defiled the temple by offering a pig. He also erected an altar to the pagan gods and prohibited temple worship. There were a lot of Jews that died during this period. But thanks to a small group of Maccabees who were totally outnumbered, they drove them off and were able to rededicate the temple. Now there's some controversy over the temple and the miracle of the oil, because we have no definitive proof, like court documents signed, sealed by notary, approved by a judge. We have none of that saying that the miracle of the oil actually in reality happened. However, could Yahweh have done that? You bet your bottom dollar. In 1 Kings 17:14, we learn the final stages of the story of the prophet and the widow in the famine that hit Israel. In verse 14 it says, the flour and the oil shall not be used up. And in verse 15 it says, she, the prophet, and her children, I think it is, ate for many days. So at this point, the proper question to be asking is, what is the weightier thing? Is it getting every minute detail about the oil and the temple and the dedication correct? Or is it the fact that God triumphed, the temple was rededicated, and the true miracle that God did for us was giving us new light and new life through Jesus Christ, the light of the world? Many years ago, right after I started my walk as a Hebrew, God came to visit me. I didn't ask for it, and I wasn't expecting it, but he did come. I don't remember most of it because he put me to sleep, but what I remember was even in a sepia, the brown sepia format, the colors coming off of him were amazing. There were so many colors, so many variations to those colors, all originating with him and flying off of him, that it was stunning. Hanukkah is a festival of lights, and Yeshua is the light of the world, so enjoy the lights. Then there's the supposed miracle of the oil. I say supposed because I don't feel like being hit with rotten tomatoes. One of the traditions of Hanukkah is to fry all your food. Let's face it, you're being given permission to imbibe in all things fried without feeling guilty. Enjoy the food. In our culture, December has become, December and November, predominantly December is what we're speaking about, has become the month of family gatherings. And a Proverbs 31 woman, her first ministry is with her family. So enjoy your family. Become a living picture of the Shamash candle and serve them with love. And of course, give them lots of food, because if I don't have latkes, my kids are going to kill me. Anywho, do what the Shamash does and kindle a light in your children and your family's heart, and maybe even a fire for him. So many of us have dealt with great sorrow when we came into the Hebrew walk, because we seem to have lost all our family traditions, just everything that was familiar. Then we struggle and fight because we want to replace that gap. In my opinion, part of the reason the Brit Hadashah, or New Testament, is so vague on certain details is because we're being called to create our own traditions. In my family, we called it the Dyer family traditions. There's a certain way we do Hanukkah. There's a certain way we do Passover. And no matter how many Hebrew families I visited, every single one has their own way of fulfilling the mitzvot that are contained in the Tanakh. So perhaps instead of mourning what we've lost, or as the Brit Hadashah says, looking back into Egypt, oops, that was the Tanakh, not the New Testament, we should ask God to provide us with little lessons that we can pass on to those that we love, that teach about Jesus, that teach about what it is to be a servant. Take this time, and instead of going, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't celebrate it because it's pagan, I have to celebrate it because they say Jesus was there, oh wait a minute, Jesus was only there, but then it doesn't say celebrate it. Instead, take the opportunity to focus in. Maybe the first day of Hanukkah you talk about the temple and what Antiochus did to it, and maybe the second day you talk about the Maccabees and how hard their fight was, and the third day you talk about the Shamash, or you talk about the oil. Whatever it is, choose little stories, just little bites, and teach your children, and you'll be surprised in 20 years how they regurgitate it back to you. Above all, simply take this time to rededicate yourself to Yahweh, to Jesus, and make the commitment that in the next year you're going to do the best you can to become the best living temple that brings him honor and glory that's possible for a human being. Anywho, that's basically it. I got to get stepping because we've decided, my husband and I, to carry Hanukkah over till the 22nd, when my youngest son can visit us from being active duty in the Army, and my youngest son has requested lights. So because my years of mourning are over, Mama's about to light this house up in every color you can think of. No trees are not a go, but definitely lights. I hope you have a great Hanukkah, and Shalom.